Welcome to the Music Ed Matters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Williams Birch, and this podcast, it exists for you. Whether you're a music lover, an educator, a choir member, each week we bring guests to the show to help explore what matters in music. I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to the show. Hello, and welcome to the Music Ed Matters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Williams Birch, and today you get to hear from Deke Sharon. Y'all, I was so excited to talk to Deke. He is incredible. If you don't know his story, he has a Wikipedia page, y'all. He also has a great website. But Deke is the musical master behind all of the mashups on the Pitch Perfect movies. He is part of the musical genius behind the SingOff. And he is a huge part of why acapella music has exploded. His passion and excitement for more people singing is absolutely palpable. And I can't wait for you to hear this episode. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Kaleidoscope Adventures and the Kinnison Choral Company. And most importantly, it is part of the Advocacy and Collaboration series brought to you by the ACDA, the American Choral Directors Association, Standing Committee for Advocacy and Collaboration. Big shout out to our chairperson, Joe Cerruti, for connecting me with my new friend, Deke Sharon. Y'all, he's also a Tigger who jumps off the wall. He's also one of those folks that reads the book before classes started. He's also one of those people that just get stuff done. We're going to talk about lessons he learned being on the sets of these movies. We'll talk about how you can do whatever it takes to make things happen, and then ideas out the yin-yang. Grab a piece of paper, y'all, because Deke is about to drop so many helpful tips for wherever you are to advocate and collaborate. Without further ado, my new friend, Deke Sharon. Today on the Music Ed Matters podcast, we have a very awesome advocacy and collaboration episode with Deke Sharon. Hello, Deke.
Hello, Emmy. How you doing?
I am so excited. I'm trying not to bounce off the walls for this conversation. Thanks for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure. I bounce off the walls all the time, so you'd be in good company. In fact, in college, and we may go into the story, but the first time I auditioned for the Tufts Beelzebubs and I didn't get in, I was like, I need to go audition for something else. So I walked in and auditioned for a performance, the Tao of Pooh. It was like the Winnie the Pooh, but teaching Taoist, whatever. And I walked in, I was just like, I need to audition for something because I didn't get in this thing. And I was like, it's all my whole life. And they're like, great. And I walked in and they were like, you're Tigger. And I was like, oh, you want me to be Tigger? They're like, no, you're actually Tigger. We're going to typecast you in this role. So when you're talking about bouncing off the walls, I feel a connection. My kids used to do the C on the chest when it was, in preschool for connection. So connection, bouncing off the walls. Here we go.
I've been called Tigger so many times. I feel so seen. Thanks for sharing that story.
Yes, of course.
So I'll toss a college story back at you. When you were doing Pitch Perfect 1, you recorded some of those scenes at LSU in the old, it was like an old abandoned rec center of sorts. Yeah. So my freshman year of college, I would maybe skip class occasionally because it was one of those 1,000 person classes that no one ever knew you were there.
Nobody will ever know.
And it was attached to that old building. So we could kind of sneak into some of the doors that weren't all the way shut and go explore the old pool where y'all did the SingOff. We explored the old racquetball courts. But I was on campus when you guys were doing all those recordings.
Yay! Yeah, it was a crazy time. And it was the lowest budget movie. And I was sure it was going to go direct to DVD and no one's going to see it. And now up on the wall, I have a platinum album from it. So...
Okay, well, can we just talk about that for 1 second? You assumed it was going to go right to DVD.
100%, yes.
But you still dove in full heart.
There's no question. So it was the same thing when making the television show, The SingOff. I wasn't cast. I was like the last person hired to be the assistant to the person who was going to be doing the arranging. And I had no clout or whatever. And I walked up to the showrunner the first day and I was like, listen, sorry to bother you, but I noticed there are no sound checks on the schedule anywhere for any of the groups. And he was like, there are no sound checks because there aren't going to be any sound checks. Sit down, shut up, and know your place. So I realized this whole thing is going to collapse and the show's going to be terrible. So I ran around like the dog in Wallace and Gromit and just fixed things until by the end of the first season, they made me a producer. They're like, we realized you understand how this works. And I was totally expecting to get fired. And then 2 weeks in, I got this little note that said, we see what you're doing and we appreciate it. Sony. was like, no name, no whatever. It was so like weird, spy, whatever. But that's the way I do things. And when it came to the Pitch Perfect movies, I just would do whatever it took, talk to whoever, work with whoever, and poured my heart into it. Because then I'm like, this is our one chance to make an a cappella movie, and I'm going to go down with this ship. Oh, it was so low budget. There was no money for anything. And I can tell you stories, but in the end, the stars aligned, everything came together, and these lovely 10 actresses, 9 of whom never even sang in choir. Yeah. Try making a vocal blend. We had one ringer, Kelly Jekyll from the Acapella world. She was in 2 seasons of the SingOff, and then 9 people. And I asked them, like, how many of you sang in Acapella? None. Crickets. How many of you sang in choir? One of them raised her hand and she said, does a semester in middle school count? That's when the blood drained from my face. And the director of the movie would like pull me aside Friday when we did the show and tells, and both the male and the female group, the troublemakers, and they both did their dances great. And then the guys would go up and sing. And it was like 2 leads from Broadway, Skylar Aston and then Ben Platt, who people, of course, know now from Darren and Hanson. And then the group was backfilled with local college a cappella singers. And give me mediocre college a cappella guys, I will make magic. Like, I know how to do this. But then the Barden Bellas came up to sing, and it was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, they were like, rhythm, the timing, the harmony, the blend, it was a catastrophe. Literally, I have recordings that maybe upon my death will be released to a select number of people to listen to. And it was horrible. Yeah. And the director would say, Deke, the women are supposed to win this movie. And I was like, I know. But the stars aligned, and it all pulled out together in the end. But it was a lot of like 2 hours of sleeping at night. And yeah.
You had to teach all of the basics of choir to grown people fast.
To grown people, and not to put too fine a point on it, but the typecasting, as we spoke about typecasting before, was pretty significant. Each one of them was incredibly different and archetypal because that's who they were. And of course they were acting, but you've got Esther Dean, who wrote Firework, but she's like got this like low, gravelly R&B voice, right? Mm-hmm. And then you've got Anna Camp, who has this really forward kind of nasal, tone or whatever. And then everybody knows Anna Kendrick's voice because of the Cup song. And then, Hannah Mae Lee is kind of singing quietly and breathy. And then Rebel Wilson's out there singing like this. Make a blend, go. Oh, by the way, you have a month, and the entire movie rides upon every choice that you make. You only get an hour a day during Acapella boot camp to work with them all together. Oh, plus you have to teach them all the hardest acapella that college acapella singers would ever have, and they have to nail it and record in the studio and then lip sync to it, and even getting them to remember what they sang. But they had to sing it for me perfectly. But they also have to do that in alignment with each other. And so individual lessons, group lessons, trying to build some kind of a blend. And many of them didn't read music. Some of them, like Rebel and Esther, like had their own notation systems with the words where they'd like write these arrows and underline certain things. And it was like this cuneiform. It was completely ridiculous. Yeah. Yeah. No pressure.
No pressure.
Sleep well.
Holy smokes. You had to do all of that. None of us knew any of that. But you did. And that makes teaching in the trenches right now seem a little bit easier. I mean, have a multi-million, you had a cheap budget the first time, but here, a whole entire movie is riding on your back. Teach everything in a month, in an hour a day.
Yeah, well, second movie was easy because I knew every single one of them and how they learn and what they need. We're going to record this thing for you. You're going to have audio tracks. You're going to learn it. And it can't be sheet music, great, whatever. Boom, 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 boom. Every single one of them, line them up, wind them up. And I would put a big board up in the room, a big whiteboard with every single song title and every single name down. And they had to sing the part perfectly for me to go into the recording studio that we built there to record themselves. So it's like, okay, you're ready. So make a little mark in the thing, and they could all just see the big board up there, and I let competition do the rest.
Hello, that works great with sales. Great. That works so great with every age group. That's right before you and I recorded. That's in my lesson plan for my lecture on Monday for my methods class.
I see the whiteboard behind you.
Yes, it's part of the game. It's part of all the fun. Oh my gosh. Okay, so obviously you have some good chops in choir. You're not like all the girls in the movie that didn't have choir experience. You have a Wikipedia page, and it says you started singing in choir at age 5. Tell us about your first choir experience.
My first choir was at the little Episcopalian church 3 blocks from my house, St. Mary the Virgin in San Francisco, and it's still there. And I would show up on Wednesday afternoons after school, and we would sing. And I was this tiny little blonde towhead, but I had soaring high C's effortlessly. And in fact, the conductor of the choir would bring me in once or twice a year to sing with the adults, because there were a couple songs I needed me from like these high Missouri areas or whatever. And I was like, sure, I'll do whatever. And then when I was 7 years old, this was back, it was very different from people who are young today who are watching this, where everybody's overscheduled or whatever. After school, you just do your school and then you run around and play with your friends in the sidewalk in the street. And then it's like 6 o'clock and the sun's going down. You better go home and have dinner. Simple as that. But my mom like had perfect grades and everything. She was like, you can really use like some after school activity. Would you like to learn Mandarin Chinese or join the San Francisco Boys Chorus? And it was the easy choice for me. I was like, Boys Chorus, let's go. So at age 7, I joined it and I just kind of sang along. And then someone said like, well, don't you want to be in the higher level choirs? I was like, oh, I guess I could do that. So I was in the intermediate group for 1 month, fastest person ever to go through it. And then I was the youngest person ever at age 9 in the adult group. And I was in operas with Pavarotti, and I missed the first month of 4th grade touring around Alaska. It was super, super fun. And I was just this little kid who music came easily to him and learned all his music and stood in the very end of the front row and sang all the high notes. And
oh my goodness.
I loved choir. And it was easy for me. I had a really great ear, and boom. But I learned sight singing and all of it. And then went off to conservatory, and I was like, I love vocal music. And I was in every group, every choir, everything I could do. Music Man, my freshman year, I was the lead in the barbershop quartet, and I just kept going all 4 years as like a student project, plus was in the select group and the TA for the choir in high school, and on from there.
I see a trend here.
Yes.
You do whatever it takes. I think you've already said that once, so I'll say it again.
I do whatever it takes to learn as much as possible. And in fact, I even changed degrees when I was at the New England Conservatory of Music. I was in what's now called contemporary improvisation. Back then it was third stream studies. Gunther Schuller had created this like kind of melding of classical and jazz and world music to try to give you this totality of music experience. And I was like, that's the one I want. I want the extra hard one where you have to have tons of ear training and do all this stuff. But by junior year, they shifted into what they call the development of personal style. And I was like, I'm not ready to develop any style. So I shifted over to theory and composition. But when I got to the New England Conservatory, I had placed out of all the undergraduate theory classes. So all my theory classes for my undergraduate degree were all grad courses.
Wow.
So it's just like bing, 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 bing. So because I just needed to fill my brain with all this information. And then of course I graduated, and the most apparent thing of all is that it's music theory. These are guesses as to how you make good music after people have done it. It's not like there are perfect rules, but I wanted to understand every tradition. I wanted to understand of each perspective and really have all of that. So I had all these tools to work with. But the thing I really wanted to do is reach the most people possible. And the way to do that is through popular music, which at a conservatory was frowned upon. Mm-hmm. And I'd have the head of the department, Rand Blake. So why don't you use more of these kind of chords? And he would just lay his fingers on the, piano. And I'd be like, I hear a flat 9, sharp 11. What? Why aren't you doing this with your music? And I was like, triads are beautiful. People love them. Mm-hmm. I'll add a 7th and a 9th, and we'll do this. But most of all, I wanted to give everybody in the world the same experience as I had, to get as many people singing and get us back to the way the world was before recorded music. And that's a soapbox I can get on. And if you want me, Emmy, too, I'll get on it right now.
Oh, I love this soapbox. You talked about this in the beginning of your 2016 talks with Google. Give us you can jump on that soapbox for a hot second, because I think it's really important for us as educators to hear this conversation.
Well, yeah, and I'm preaching to the choir right now. Literally, you are the choir. All you, vocal educators. But the bottom line is this: before recorded music, everybody sang. I mean, this was a thing. Think about the old days in colleges. Everybody knew the school fight song. They knew the school alma mater. There'd be these big gatherings. You'd have 1,000 people gather together. And then 4th of July, people get together and sing patriotic songs around the town gazebo. Very Music Man. But that's the way that it was. And if you wanted Christmas carols, you had to sing them yourself. You want music after dinner, you retire around the spinet and there'd be a sing-along. It was a part of normal culture. And that's why you read about it in classic novels, both, high culture and the people. And of course there were fields, work songs in the fields, music was everywhere, but it's because we were making it. And as soon as recorded music came along, it was John Philip Sousa, the March, guy, who said this is going to ruin music, and everybody laughed at him like it was a Luddite. Like, you don't understand, music will be everywhere. And he did understand, because music is everywhere, but we're not the ones making it.
Mm-hmm.
And generation after generation, you'd see the respect for and the apparent importance of music education slipping down the tiers to where we are now. It's not even in some school systems. And those of you who are out there teaching it, you may be the only music teacher in the school, or there's like one band and one choir teacher for a school of 2,000. And this is madness. You go back to Pythagoras in the early Greek, like he was an education expert. He believed there were 5 subjects that should be taught to everyone, and one of them was music. And we know, you can go on the Course America site, you can see all the articles. You've been sharing them, you've been handing them to the head of your school and saying, basically, come on, we need these programs. The kids who are in choir are bullied less, they have a built-in group of friends, they stay in school longer, they get more, better grades, which has long-term effects through their lifetime. And the thing I'll leave you all with as well is that the solace you should have is, who do these kids come back to when they visit school? It's the music department or theater. Like, these are the places where the holistic approach to teaching is resonates with them. And these kids, like, the lessons that they learn about emotional availability and vulnerability and connecting with other people, etc., rise above simply learning from a book. And I know all of you are doing everything you can to increase your enrollment, especially post-COVID, where some of you have had your classes cut in half, because what sucks more than Zoom choir? Honestly, nothing. Mm-hmm. It was horrible. Mm-hmm. I was visiting so many classes and trying to do every song and dance I could to try to get these kids excited and interested, but it's rough. So anyway, thank you for what you're doing. We literally need to change the world back to the way it was. And my motto is to spread harmony through harmony, because our world needs interpersonal harmony. And when you get people singing together, they realize the sum is greater than the individual parts. What they create together is so much more important. And the differences they have are valuable. You want the different kinds of voices because it makes your choir stronger and it makes the sound richer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know most of this, but I had to say it anyway because that's my life's work.
Because this will be the video link they can share with their administrators when they need to.
Fair enough. I will call your administrator. I will get on the phone, and whoever it is, Jim, Judy, I don't care the person's name. Here's the deal.
Okay, so you bring up a really good point, how music has kind of slipped to a 3rd or 4th rate subject. It's being slashed, it's being cut. And this is an advocacy and collaboration episode. Let's talk about advocating. Yeah. What can we do? What are some things that you've seen across the country? You're an entrepreneur, awesome human. In fact, one of my favorite quotes is that if there's an acronym, you probably made it. Someone on your website.
Not everywhere. Not IBM, just in the acapella world.
It says you're an acapella guru, that if there's an acronym that was made, you probably made it.
Yeah. Well, maybe. My apologies in advance for the alphabet too. So, okay. So here, this is me speaking directly to all of you educators. And those of you who already know this, I apologize for beating a drum that you're aware of. Nobody listens to music because it's perfect, okay? At the end of a long day, you listen to music because of the way it makes you feel, not because it's fantastic, right? And you go back and you listen to old Motown, it's by today's standards out of tune, but it's also perfect, right? You wouldn't change a thing about it. Problem is, through our conservatory educations, and this resonates with me because I had it as well, there are the musicians who are the instrumentalists, and the singers who are the vocalists. And it's assumed that the singers aren't real musicians, the instrumentalists are. And so the singers, and many educators as well, who have learned through the system, have a chip on their shoulder because they're not taken seriously. So what do? They run screaming towards pitches and rhythms, technical precision, to show the world, look at how great our choir is. Look at how fantastic we are because we're singing the notes perfectly and we're hitting all these rhythms. And I know there are adjudications and there are competitions and there are rankings, and I'm involved in the World Choir Games, and I'm involved and created the competition that's at the core of Pitch Perfect. But I wanted there to be a March Madness of Acapella so people would come to the concerts, not because I wanted these groups to obsess about their diction, which makes no sense in popular music. It's completely ridiculous. That category makes no sense, shouldn't be there. Have you listened to Billie Eilish? Anyway, my point is this. if you want to change the world and you want to get more people in your program, stop chasing that impossible goal of technical precision. Your focus and energy should be on reaching your community and getting out there in front of people. A lot of choral programs have 3 concerts a year, and that's when they get in front of people, and the rest of the time they don't. But going in, and I know COVID has made a mess of this, so we're still coming out of it, but singing for the entire student body, getting out there and singing in nursing homes, going on the weekends to farmers markets, performing on morning radio shows and any local television morning, after school, whatever, getting out in the public and singing at the middle schools. Like if you're performing once a week, you're doing it right. And also when you're making videos, it shouldn't be about let's show the world how perfect our version of Buxtehude is or whatever, because nobody's going to care and you're going to have 17 views. Try to pick a song that's the perfect overlap, the Venn diagram overlap between something your group does well and something that will connect with what's going on in your culture, in your society. It could be global. It could be specifically local about a festival or an event or a cultural thing or whatever. And make that meaningful music for people. Don't obsess about it being perfect. Have your metric be how many people are going to view it. Now, to go a little bit of a sidebar, I'm often asked by the barbershop world, how do we get more people singing barbershop? Which I'm not going to go down this entire path too long, but they obsess about their gold medals and their rankings and their whole national and international competition circuit and whatever. And it's wonderful they get to see each other. And a lot of them don't take it seriously. So I'm not trying to throw the whole baby out with the bathwater. But I did write a letter to the head of all of the organizations a few years ago. And I said, hey, how about this for an idea? 1 year, cancel all those awards, stop, teaching to the test and trying to impress all the judges and impress each other, make it all about the outside world. So here are your gold medals. 1 gold medal for the person or the group, the choir or the quartet that has the most video views over the course of that year. 1 for the chorus that gets the most new members that year. 1 gold medal for the chorus and quartet who sings to the most people live, right? Mm-hmm. Let's change the metric so that we can get as many new people excited and interested in this music, because everybody in these quartets and courses, they're smart people. They're just focusing their money and energy and their coaching and all this kind of stuff on trying to get the most perfect scores and ring the most chords and all that stuff. I'm not saying that's not valuable. I'm saying it's not the point. Mm-hmm. And if you can get your kids out into the community, and you can be like, this year, we're going to have more public performances than ever before. This year, we're going to make a video that's going to get more views than we've ever had before. This year, we're going to get more people enrolled in choir than ever before. How are we going to do that? How are we going to do that? We're going to sing a song on the radio, one that's appropriate, whatever. And the first week of school and get everybody excited and see if we can get some kids swapping in, or at the halfway mark. We're going to get out there in front of this kind of thing. And we're going to be performing at all the sporting events and all the school functions and go around to the middle schools. And I know you all are thinking about this, but it often happens within the framework of this is the good music and this is the right way to do it. And I'm not anti-Bach. I'm not saying you shouldn't sing the masterworks, but in the same way that you don't teach someone to read by handing them Shakespeare, right? You start out with Dr. Seuss, then you move through Harry Potter, maybe you skip Twilight, and then you go on to, right? This is what we need to be looking at. If you want to get kids in your school program, you're not going to be necessarily, sweeping them in by singing Mozart. Some might like it, some might be interested in it. I'm not saying you shouldn't sing it, but that's not the thing that's going to get them in. Meet them halfway with the music of their life, the music that they're interested in, songs. And that's why I'm doing popular music. I'd be very happy to spend my entire life doing acapella bossa nova. Don't even test me, but this is why I'm arranging the latest Dua Lipa tune in SSA format so middle schools can sing it. So we change those lives and we rescue these kids who feel isolated. They join choir, their lives are so much better, and they're on this track to success and connectedness.
Your Tigger energy is absolutely contagious, and I'm so excited, to see that Dua Lipa arrangement. I just heard the song yesterday. It sounds great. And I have a group of middle school choir kids that I'm sure would love to sing that song. Sidebar. But back on this track, you've given us ideas for how to advocate for our programs by building them, by being seen, and by shifting the focus. Yes, you can still look towards perfection, but shifting the focus to more connection and meaningful things. Let me ask the tough question.
Let me say one more thing on that.
Oh, yeah.
just for some people who are like, but that's what we need to do. We need to teach perfection. We need to teach excellence. Yes, but it's not the point. You don't go into a bookstore and say, I would like the most perfectly spelled book. I want the book with the greatest grammar. Just please give me a book that has flawless sentences. You don't go to the arts for that. You don't go to a movie and just think like, all I care about is the cinematography, right? I just want the lighting in this movie to be flawless. You don't. You're connected to the arts through the stories that it tells, the meaning that it has to you, the place that it brings your heart. I've written an entire book, The Heart of Vocal Harmony. Sorry to turn this into a plug.
Please do.
I wrote this book, every single time I would go and coach a choir, I would sit there and say, as soon as they're done singing a song, it's like, great. Okay, so that I'm on the right page with you guys, why are you singing this song? What's the point? What's the message that you're trying to sing? What's the connection with, what the song meant when it was originally performed, and your version of it, and how you're trying to bring that out? Like, what are you trying to say? And I'd get met with so many blank faces.
Yes.
It's like, well, then what's the point, right? It's like, you hear about these people who are great at playing Scrabble. They don't speak English. They're like, they never learned as a language. They just learned lists of words and they just put them together like it's math. No joke. Some of the greatest Scrabble players in the world supposedly don't speak or understand English much. They're just using, I know, it's crazy. I feel like that's
But
where
that's
we're
so
going.
much of music, where it's just a series of lines, maybe in German or Latin or whatever, and there's no connective. Yes.
Yeah, just make it pretty, make it whatever. A crystalline, flawless performance that leaves the audience cold is literally working backwards. And here's the thing, everybody wants vocal music around the holidays, but why aren't they going to classical choral concerts? Why aren't they going and filling these halls listening to this music? Because it's not connecting with them. And yet a college acapella group can get 1,000 people going, and it's a student-run sloppy mess, and they're up there having a good time. I'm not talking about the top groups, right? There are 3,000 college acapella groups out there. I'm not talking about Berkeley pitch slaps, right? I'm talking about the university. How about this? The community college, they just practice, twice a week at lunchtime, and they go out there and they sing Faith by George Michael, and it's a mess, and every person in the audience is smiling and clapping along. That is the connection that we need to have in our communities to music. And we should not be turning our noses up at it, right? Because it's honest, and that's the kind of joy that we need to be infusing all of our music with. And there's a problem that we all have, and it's not just us with conservatory educations, it's everyone in our culture. American Idol has destroyed our sense of respecting amateur music for what it is, right? Mm-hmm. Making fun of these early auditions and whatever, it's contemptible and disgusting. If you see a few 40-year-olds playing basketball on a Sunday around the hoops, people walk by and they're like, oh, that's fun. These guys are having fun playing basketball. You see a group of 40-year-olds singing a song on the street corner, and everyone's a critic. Everybody's like, I don't know about that. To that lead vocalist, I wouldn't have picked that song for him, right? What are we all, better than everybody in the world? And what are we trying to prove? Why can't we just listen to that music and enjoy it as the gift that it is? And here's the thing, if there's enough heart and personality in it, it will overwhelm you. Listen to old Persuasions recordings. Those guys were not always in tune. You might even argue they weren't often in tune. However, every time you hear Jerry Lawson soaring on some high notes and that big whoo chord going on behind it, your heart swells. It's fantastic. So I think we can have both. I think we can still have technical excellence. Just don't make it a point. And get out there in front of your kids, fill their hearts, and inspire them to connect with their students. Look them in the eye, sing to people, and take pride in getting more people into choir. And then one by one, we change the world.
I love this. I'm so inspired to go start running and singing in the streets.
Good,
I want to ask the tough question. Here's the tough one.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone listening is saying, where am I going to find the time for that?
The time for what?
The time for weekly concerts, the time for the extra visits to the different places. How do you answer that question from the curmudgeon that thinks there's not enough time?
That's a good question. I think, okay, first of all, yes, you are all overworked, but let's start from the perspective of let's get more people into choir. Because when you get more people into choir, you get budget, you get an assistant, you get an accompanist, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if your choir doubles or triples in size, all of a sudden things are going to start unlocking for you, number one. Number two, it's possible to get parents more involved and to teach your group. You might have a choir of 24, you might have a choir of 48 or whatever. But if you teach some music that works in quartets or sextets or whatever, it's possible to wind these kids up and then find a way for smaller ensembles to get out there in front of people and perform. Plus, here's the thing. If you are able to be on a morning radio show, if the local television network wants you to come and sing a carol on the air or whatever, you better believe the school board is going to be like, yes, get out there in front of people. They want the positive vibes. I was just working with a school back in Barrington, Illinois, and they do a magical thing around the holidays. And they, I think, some total do something like 200 gigs or something in the area. Like everybody, I don't know what the numbers were, like blew my mind because everyone wants them and they hire them out in different quartets and all this money comes into the program. And it's magnificent. There are ways you can do it, and it's a matter of stepping stone forward. But let me also leave you with this concept. Your kids work hardest right before their exam, right before they need to have something done. Procrastination is unfortunately a scourge. I am the opposite. We don't have a word in English for the person who would get their school books for the semester in college and read them before the school start.
Oh, you and me are such friends. We are I love you dearly. Thank you for acknowledging that.
I mean, I don't like right. There's nobody.
Why would you wait till the last minute?
Yes, totally. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Like, do things ahead of time. Do them early. Don't wait. Right. But my point is, if you have little concerts, little performances, even in the school, even at lunchtime for whatever, and then it's like, we need to have this song for this day. We need to have this one for whatever. There are like little goals throughout the way. And then all of a sudden you'll find your repertoire at the end of the year is much more expansive. But also, if the whole point of performing and singing and music is connecting with an audience, how good are they going to get at it if they get 3 opportunities a year? They need to get in front of the people and learn. It motivates them to learn the music, but also then they understand. So many groups I work with, they stare off into the rafters, which, okay, fine. If you're singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, your dream, whatever. But if you like most songs, you should be singing and looking at the audience. And conductors, get out of the way. If you're singing a pop tune, it's got one steady tempo. Start the song off and move out of the way and tell your singers to look at the audience. Like this whole all eyes on me thing has got a little too much, egotism in it. We don't need this. You're not Leonard Bernstein, and this isn't the overture to Candide where the tempo's changing every measure, right?
Yeah.
It's you're not pulsing and contracting, whatever. There are times for that, right? Of course there are, but a lot of the time your singers need to be wound up and focused at and singing to the audience, meeting their eye, connecting with them. That is it's electric when people see that, right? And then there's not that kind of like distant, cold, aloof, erudite, and make them memorize the music too. No, none of this right. No. They can do it. Have them work on it at home. They've got homework in other classes. Send them home with recordings. Everybody should be recording the end of each rehearsal, right? The last time through it and listening to it before they show up at the next rehearsal. And they don't have this slippage between each rehearsal, right? And that's what I do with my pro groups all the time. You think I'm going to let them let's start again. Oh, let me play this part for you again. No, I played it for you before. You know what it is. And I send out the music and MIDI files and everything like that before we even get together. My motto is, I don't even like to do warm-ups together. I mean, you guys think, you wrote a book on warm-ups. Yeah, I did. But those are warm-ups that are about blend and, and connecting and rhythm and all this kind of stuff that you sing multi-part together to work on these specific things. Singing a bunch of scales puts them in autopilot. Autopilot is your enemy. It's the worst thing that you can have happen. I think that the only thing you should be doing with everybody together in rehearsal is stuff that you need everybody together for, right? Individual parts as much as possible. Have your sectionals, have them break out into whatever. You want to, if you're going to be plunking parts, make a recording of it beforehand and send it out and have them learn it. They come together. And then if you have to zhuzh a couple things in this, they didn't know their part, fine, you can go over it. But then while you're playing it for them in rehearsal, they're recording themselves. They can put their phones on airplane mode and open up their voice memo thing and only use that. And then they have those recordings to listen to. You'll learn music so much faster. You'll be able to spend your time in rehearsals polishing, and then glory be, your repertoire is going to be twice as large and it's going to sound really good a lot sooner. And if you've got more of those performing opportunities, your singers are going to be taking it upon themselves to be focused and excited more. And once you start getting that momentum going with the performances, sky's the limit.
These are great ideas. You've addressed all of the concerns, every question that someone listening could have.
No. There are many more concerns. I'm sure there are more.
The main questions are always time, resources, where, and how. How do we learn that much music? Where are we going to go? Where am I going to get the resources to help them do those things? And you've addressed all of that.
Well, people also, you think that like, oh, we're choir, nobody's paying attention. We have the secret sauce, okay? Orchestra, band, you're not going to be marching into a small radio station with your tubas and your sousaphones and whatever and try to perform. It's not going to happen. We can take an acapella group, a small ensemble, and you can airlift them anywhere, right? I mean, that's part of the reason why I was able to perform with Ray Charles and James Brown and all these great performers back when I was young and performing and started the house jacks and all this kind of stuff. You slide out in front of the stage, boom, you're there. So you can do radio, you can do television, you can do appearances at used car lots, you can go anywhere. And everywhere, sporting events, they don't just want the national anthem, they want the seventh inning stretch. They want something during halftime. And the fact that you've got a performing group that's able to perform, you can perform during tailgating out, before the game. There's so much out there in so many places, and people are so excited to have it. Plus, all the nonprofits in the area would love to have you. Museums, they've got galas, special events for donors, like all this kind of stuff. There's so many places, and there could be money coming back into your program as a result of you showing up and doing all of these different events. So there are gigs out there to be had that no other organization at your school or your university could service, could be a part of. Acapella can go anywhere and do anything, any style of music across the ages. You can go from Gregorian chant all the way up to the latest pop tune and everywhere in between, like the King Singers do. And when you've got a repertoire that's varied like that, it's a beautiful thing.
This is the perfect segue too into the other part of what our committee does. We advocate and collaborate. And you're talking about collaborations with community organizations, with different locations, different things, different resources, different medias. I love that you have had all of these really cool collaborations. So before we dive into collaborations, what's your most memorable one? I mean, you've been on stage with Ray Charles, but what's your most memorable collaboration?
Most memorable collaboration. Okay, this isn't what you were thinking it was going to be, but it's very memorable. There are different kinds of community organizations in different parts of the world that do different things and people get together. There's a tradition in Japan where empty nester mothers, seem to be most of these groups, would get together and they would learn, best I could call it is movement, but it's not like full choreo. Sometimes they're seated and they're just moving their hands or their arms, and they would learn these kind of elaborate synchronized dances to music and song. I don't even know what it's called. I don't quite know. But when my group was going over and touring in Japan, there were a couple of these I don't want to call them mothers groups, but something. And they had all these dances and they did it to our original music. So during our concert, we'd go up and we'd sing, and then we had them come out on stage behind us or around us and sitting in front of us and doing this kind of like, it was like yoga meets chair dancing meets some like patterned whatever, as we're singing these original songs. That cool. It was so memorable because I was like, what is happening right now? Like I felt like I was like, I've never heard of this happening. This isn't a thing that I know. But it was beautiful also because it was amateur performing by them. And here's a thing that I hammer home all the time with community choirs or whatever. The word amateur at its root has the French word amour. It's the love of. I've seen many amateur performances that were far more powerful, impactful, and wonderful than professional performances because their hearts were in it. And there wasn't the artifice, and they're not lip syncing as they're over dancing and all that kind of stuff. If you think that your high school choirs can't make people laugh, can't make people cry, can't change the world, you are completely dead wrong. In fact, they have this incredible power, which is their sincerity and their honesty. And that's why there have been incredible videos that have gone viral of groups just being themselves and singing and doing what they want to. And frankly, what is TikTok? It's a bunch of high schoolers being idiots. Like that's the entirety of the form, right? Nobody else cares. Nobody else wants to, whatever. And there are singing groups that are on there, amateur singing groups, and they have millions and millions of views singing 30 seconds of some song or whatever. It's very, very doable within these programs and whatever. And I don't think you have to sacrifice doing classical music. Just don't only do classical music, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like that.
I love this. And so now you've given us even more ideas: collaborations with TikTok, collaborations with
Oh, totally.
community dance troops, or a chair arm
Yep.
dancing things.
All of it.
There's no limit. And I think that's what you're showing us. You started by telling us the story of jumping into Pitch Perfect and just running around to get it all done. And I feel like that lesson in and of itself is what we need as we advocate and collaborate within our organizations. Let's pivot
And
slightly.
let me put one other thing
Yeah,
out
yeah,
there,
go.
and this is I have a really good friend that I grew up with. His family's German, and came over from the Goethe Institute and lived, from about third grade through ninth grade. We went to school together, and then he ended up going back to Germany and getting a degree there. And now he works as a consultant and everything like that. And when I caught back up with him, and I was over on tour with my band in Germany, and he would ask me like, so how did you start your band? I said, well, I just found people and then I started it. He was like, well, how did you start the nonprofit organization? I was like, well, I bought a book. I mean, this is pre-internet. I bought a book on starting a nonprofit, and then I tore out the pages in the back, filled them in, and sent them in. Like, I just did it. As Americans, we have a very kind of like maverick entrepreneurial thing that we just take for granted, where it's like, well, if you want to do something, just figure out how to do it and do it. I'm not saying break laws, but most of the time, there's nobody standing in your way to do things, but trying to do them within the system is incredibly frustrating. And so maybe just make it happen on your own, and then you have a new thing. And that's the way that things start. That's how it's done. All of that knowledge and experience and perspective is inside of you. As an American, you know how this works. Go that extra step and just try to start something. Start an after school group. Start a group in the evenings. An adult community choir. Put together a festival. A lot of the time when I'm out at schools, I'm there because one director in the region was like, I want to put together an acapella festival, and the other groups that come spend money or whatever, and they, I fly in and I get paid, and the school program makes a bunch of money on it, because then they sell tickets in the end and people are excited about this and they want to be a part of it. And then all of a sudden they're the magnet for their entire community. And it's just because they were like, oh, well, I guess I'll put together this festival. Boom. And then they did.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that.
Get an idea and make it happen. Do the work, make it happen.
And make it happen. And then it's always hardest in the beginning, and there's a lot of fear or whatever. Mm-hmm. Number one thing I'd say is don't do it alone. If you can get a couple other people who are like-minded and have a little team, you'll lift each other up, and you'll handle the creative and they'll handle the financial, and this person will handle logistical and this person will handle the money, whatever. But that kind of like starting, let's put a show on in the barn, Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland, you can do it. And then once it's happening, it's a fantastic thing. It fills your heart, and it's frustrating at times and all but the momentum moves forward. And we really need this post-COVID with a lot of things having, shut down and closed and whatever. Those directors really want to be able to go to local festivals, and it doesn't have to be a competition, or it can be, it can be whatever you want it to be. What do you like? What do you want it to be? If you don't want diction to be a category, don't put diction, you get to choose. If you're frustrated, if you're the kind of person who's watching this, you're like, oh, yeah, if I would do it this way and I would do it differently, great, do it differently.
Go do it. Yes.
Go do it. That's how it works.
I love it. Okay, well, let's talk about something you went and did. You went and gone did.
I gone and went and did it. Yes.
You went and did.
Yeah.
You started the Contemporary Acapella Society while you were still in college.
Yes.
How did you just get started with that? And how did that help with the evolution of acapella and really raising awareness and the popularity of the genre?
So when I was in college and music director of the Tusk Beelzebubs, I wanted to sing the latest songs on the radio a cappella, and you couldn't do that. Everything was For the Longest Time. Everything was Blue Moon. Everything was In the Still of the Night and Lion Sleeps Tonight. It was the classics, right? And occasionally a song would be on the radio that'd be kind of a cappella. So then people do Crosby, Stills and Nash, whatever. But there was like 50 songs. That was it. And everybody sang the same 50 songs, whatever. And I wanted to do Led Zeppelin and Peter Gabriel, and I wanted to do Pink Floyd and the songs that were booming out of people's, college dorm rooms in the 80s. And it was actually the song In Your Eyes. I started to I saw it in the movie. I was like, I want to do that song. Brought it back to my dorm room, couldn't arrange it. Got out a piece of orchestral staff paper, started notating what I heard. It turned out to be 5 different percussion parts. So I figured out how to make the sounds with my voice, brought it into the group. They laughed at me, as they often did. But then they started to try it. And this, 4-part, 14-person group became a 12-part 14-person group with each person doing their own part. And we were off to the races. The audience responses were crazy, giant. And so I started to use voices as instruments and not think about people as tenor one, tenor two, baritone, bass, but rather, okay, we can have the two of you creating a percussive bed and you guys are going to be synthesizers, whatever. And then as I was getting this going, my phone started ringing and other college groups were calling me to arrange for them. So by the time I graduated, I already was making enough money that I could live on from that. But most of all, we would be touring around so much to so many groups because our group was really popular and had a great mailing list. So I made all these friends and I wanted to kind of connect people. So I started the Collegiate Acapella News. It was just a little newsletter to go out 4 times a year, my senior year, to connect different groups in the area. And after a couple editions, enough like fans had reached out to me and people who were in professional groups and said like, well, there's nothing like this for the rest of the world. Would you consider like expanding out the scope? So I changed it from the Collegiate Acapella News to the Contemporary Acapella News. And then as soon as I got back home after graduating in San Francisco, I filed the nonprofit paperwork for the Contemporary Acapella Society of America, CASA. And I wanted there to be a March Madness of acapella so that people would hear about this new style of music, because I felt like I had lightning in a bottle if people only knew. It took a long time, but it ended up, I was right. The SingOff and Pitch Perfect and people loved this kind of music. And now Pentatonics has more followers on YouTube than Beyonce. It's crazy statistics. They fill stadiums. But I started the first acapella publishing company. Nobody wanted to publish the music. No, we'll talk about that. And festivals, the first get-togethers and conferences and the competitions. And I just wanted to create this community. And so I just started these things, and they started really small. I had a program of Sunday Sings, and a dozen people would show up and sing some a cappella in San Francisco on a Sunday afternoon. And then a dozen people became 20 people, and then that became more people. But then I got too busy to do it. So then I did other stuff. Like we just started.
I think you also, in addition to the just starting it, you keep going back to the importance of community and reaching more people through the use of popular genres.
That's right. That's the whole thing.
I love it. I'm starting to synthesize this. How did your arranging voice then evolve from that beginning Led Zeppelin, Sledgehammer?
Exactly.
Anyway, how did you evolve from that all the way up to where you are today, arranging Dua Lipa?
So the goal has always been to connect the singers with the audience. And there are some fantastic arrangers out there like Gene Perling who have a very specific style. You hear a Gene Perling arrangement, you're like, that's Gene Perling. That singer's no limit. I know, no question. The same when you see Bob Fosse and you're like, Bob Fosse. Okay, that's Bob Fosse. Like there's a specific language. Everything is brought to that particular place. And the arranger really is the center of that creative form, that universe. I'm not that kind of arranger. I'm more like Michael Bennett, who did Chorus Line and a whole slew of musicals on Broadway. And if you look at his resume and you see all the different stuff that he directed and choreographed, you'd never think that it was done by the same person. That's really what I aspire to be. I don't want anyone who's hearing my arrangements to think, that's an awesome arrangement. Who arranged that? I don't want that. I want the singers, the group, the performers, and the audience to have a connection that's powerful, and the moment to wash over them and just be like, whoa, like the finale of Pitch Perfect, where they're just like the storylines are coming together and you see the different angles and all this cool stuff's happening. And then people just get caught up in the moment. And then they're like, yes, that was awesome. Mm-hmm. Maybe at the end of it, 1 out of every 100 people might go like, that was a really cool version of that song. Like, I wonder who put that together. Most people don't even know what arranging is. They don't think of it that way, right? So maybe they'll be thinking backwards, the same way someone who's watching a movie might wonder, like, I wonder who took that book and turned it into the movie because I liked that version of the way they told the story, right? Adapted screenplay, right? But most people aren't thinking about that. And when you're writing a great adapted screenplay, the last thing you want to do is to have people like thinking in the middle of the movie, like, oh, that was that was a good way he changed it, right? It ruins the movie. Mm-hmm. I don't want to ruin the music. I literally want to get out of the way. So when I'm arranging 3-part SSA for high school or middle school groups, or I'm doing a 12-part thing for a big group, Straight No Chasers, whatever, I don't want anyone thinking about me. I literally want to just disappear into the music. And I stopped counting at 2,000 songs. Like I'm out there all the time making music in different situations. I have my new Disney acapella group, super fun, but it's not about me. It's about them, their cult of personality, Disney, the music, the experience, and tying the whole thing together. Because then it really affects people. But then it's not about me, it's about people loving it. And maybe then an empty nester will decide to join choir, because I loved choir when I was younger and I'm hearing these young people sing and I love it and I want to go join choir. Or a middle schooler will be like, that was so cool, I want to go do that and be a part of it. That's why the SingOff was so powerful. That's why Pitch Perfect got so many more college groups going. And I was like, yes, this is what we want. It's inspiring people to do this thing that's so wonderful. And it is not about me. I'm just trying to be Johnny Appleseed and plant these apple trees, and I'll never know about them. I'll never have that apple. I'll never hear this group that got started because of an arrangement that I think, or a book I wrote or whatever. But that's not the point. I'm just trying to change their society and get more people singing to make the world a better place. I'm very San Francisco that way. There's definitely some of the West Coast hippie in me, like, make the world a better place and open source, and I give things away all the time. And
I love it. I'm so thankful that you gave your time away today. These stories have been so inspiring and energizing. I can feel your energy just through the screen and through the stories. You've talked us through working and doing the hard work, getting out of the way and using empowerment of the singers and selection of the repertoire, moving away from perfection and into connection, and all of those.
I like that. I'm going to use that. Moving away from perfection into connection. No, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's your quote. Put that up on Google. Yeah, that's yours. That's a good one.
Okay, good deal. I'm glad you like it. So I just think that you've given us so much, not just with advocacy and collaboration, but with life post-pandemic. This is such a fun, I feel like I could talk to you forever. Plus I feel seen because you're a Tigger and you don't procrastinate. And I also have started a not-for-profit and multiple entrepreneurs. And people are like, how do you do that? I just submit the paperwork that the list says. I don't understand.
Totally. Let's go. And here's if I'm going to leave people with one last thing, you directors, you're like, well, but I tried this thing and I failed. Do you have any idea how many failures I have? Do you have the number of arrangements I've done that didn't work, the number of groups I've worked with, and they were like, I didn't think it was good, and then they didn't have me back as a coach, the number of organizations that I've started, festivals, the number of programs. I had this whole thing in the 1990s called the Urban Harmony Movement. I was like, Acapella can literally change inner city schools, and we can get programs going in there. It's getting funding. I had a director who was working full time. We were getting 6 figures in donations, and the whole thing fell apart because some organizations would only do it if it was within the school. Other ones only if it's outside of the school. Got boys and girls clubs involved, but then the people who were on the ground, like, they didn't care. They were only interested in the sports. The whole thing broke my heart. Years of my life into this program that could literally have changed the world, but it didn't, and it failed, and I failed. And I got the next day and I was like, okay, I'm going to do something else. That's what you got to do. That's the only way to do it. You will have so many failures. Things will not work out or whatever, but that's okay. And I think especially young people in our society, they just expect, like, will things work out, because they only see the things that worked out. They're used to seeing people's Instagram feeds where it's like a highlight reel of their best moments. Nobody's failures are out there on display. And so they get this false sense of that's the way the world is. The world's messy. The world's imperfect. It's sloppy, and it doesn't always work out the way you want, but that's okay. You just keep going and you keep trying to build things. And then some of them stick. And some of them that you don't expect, like Pitch Perfect, which I thought was going to be a total failure, but I didn't care. I gave it my all anyway. Ended up being my calling card, first sentence of your obituary. It's going to be in there somewhere, right? I thought it was going to kill me, and it's the opposite, So anyway, hang in there and keep doing it, even though you'll fail. I've auditioned for the Beelzebubs 3 times. The character of Benji in the movie Pitch Perfect is based on me, the nerdy guy who couldn't get into the acapella group. Yes! I was overzealous. I had a perfect, flawless audition. I sang 3 different parts perfectly. They were all like, their jaws hit the floor. And then in the baritone part, I was like, in a Ralph Vaughan Williams thing, I was like, in measure, 18, the half note of the second half of the measure, I sang a C. I should have sung a B flat. They both work in the chord. I just wanted to let you know I got it wrong. I thought they were all music geniuses. They were like math majors and computer science and English majors. And they were looking at me like, who's this savant kid? But he likes it a little too much. They called me overzealous. They didn't take me. They didn't take me until my 3rd audition, when I acted like I didn't care. I walked in, I didn't even have a solo prepared. And then, I know. The only way I could get into the group was to pretend like I didn't care. And then they were like, you're the guy for us. And then I became music director. So, That you do what you need to do.
You had to tame down the tiger for a hot second, and then
Be
you
a
were like,
hot second.
psych!
Totally, that's exactly what happened. Too bad, guys. I'm in now. But yeah,
awesome.
They learned to deal with me.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I always ask the guest one thing that matters, but I don't think I can summarize one thing that matters. You've given us go ahead and fail, keep trying, work hard until it happens, make things. Is there any one more thing you want the listener to walk away from this episode with?
Yes. Change a life. This is what I want you to tell your singers when they're up on stage. There isn't somebody in the audience who just lost a spouse or a parent or whatever. They are hurting inside. I've had many people come up to me after a concert and say that, and they hadn't left home for 6 months and they hadn't felt joy until today, right? There may be that preteen who's there because they're bigger sisters in the group and they had to go and they didn't want to leave home and they were just bullied or there's some terrible strife at home. It's horrible. I have an annual concert at Carnegie Hall, and I had a person come up to me afterwards and say, I'm not going to point out who the person was, but we have an immigrant who's in their group here. And this person came over to America, and the only person they knew abused them horribly. And this person wouldn't leave her room. And then I convinced her to come and be a part of this and learn the music and sit in. And then she came to your rehearsals. And then after tonight, and being in this concert with you in Carnegie Hall, she decided she's going to go back to school. She's going to dive back into life and do all this kind of stuff. Music has this power, people. We have the secret sauce. We can knit back together society, red states and blue states, the misunderstandings and the for-profit media that makes so much money on saying they're the problem. The bottom line is the commonalities that we have is so much greater than the things that separate us. And when you sing together, when you bring people together to connect in that way, they realize that. They have that experience. This is what we need in our society. So when your singers are getting up on stage, when you're about ready to play the first pitch for the first song, remind them, our job tonight is to save a life. We don't know who it is. We probably will never meet them, but we have that ability. So don't just sing the right notes. Don't just phone it in and do autopilot. Try to get your heart out there and change that life the same way someone did for you when you were young and you probably never told them about it, and they'll never know. That's the best thing we can do.
Change a life. Oh, I'm so happy you came on. Thank you so much for doing this, Deke.
My pleasure, Emily. Thank you so much.
All right, what did you think? Did you have as much fun as I did talking to Deke? Oh, so many quotes. I think that there's so many, but if you want to do something, even if you're going to fail, just figure it out and do it. Remember, we're moving away from perfection and seeking connection. Our job, as Deke just said, is to change a life. And we have the ability to do that through music. What a powerful and awesome career we get to call ours. If you want to talk about this or anything else further, you can join us over at patreon.com/musicedmatters. We have lots of conversations and monthly live meetups over there. You can also pose questions for the guests that are coming up. I hope that you know that you, my friend, you matter. We all know that music matters, especially acapella music and everything that we talked about with Deke today. And I'll see you next time on the Music Ed Matters podcast.